I'm Brittany,
I'm Maria.
and this is the Be More podcast.
Hi, everyone. Um,
Welcome, welcome.
welcome. And also, if I sound tired, I'm not tired. Brittany pointed out before we started recording, I'm
It
not
wasn't
tired. It's just,
tired. It was just she sounds
or,
more congested than she normally sounds.
and I might not have taken my medicine this morning, which, which I'll do after this. So,
And Maria and I were talking about how I wonder when it was, but anybody else who's hashtag approaching 30, all of a sudden we just started waking up one day and it was like, these are all the things that I have to do to take care of my body. Like, when did that switch get flipped? That was like, okay, you're no longer young. Like, things are starting to degenerate and you need to
I
do
don't
things
know.
to keep
I
it.
feel like it happened overnight. I'm over it.
And I honestly 100% believe that COVID has enhanced the effects of that in so
Oh,
many
yeah.
ways, and like what we're dealing with allergies. I think I just saw something this morning that was like people are becoming intolerant to alcohol as a mutation of something with COVID related in their body. And I was like, okay, cool.
Great. Less alcoholics in the world then.
But I definitely do feel like my body has just taken a bigger hit and there's more things that I have to do to
Well, probably,
keep it happy now after COVID.
probably because even like when we were quarantining, we weren't exposed to anything, and then going out, your body's just
Yeah.
like, what is all this
We
again?
went from 0 to 3,000 real quick.
Yeah, even sometimes when I go out and I come back in, my body's like, what did you do?
Yeah.
Why are you outside? So
Hashtag approaching 30. This is a really
yeah,
special year for us because
it really
that
is.
is the truth.
30.
You want to know what I was thinking about? This is not at all related to
Sure.
the topic that we were going to talk that we were.
Mm-hmm.
Good Lord, my brain. Um, we are hitting the point, you know, the whole argument of like, and I think we've talked about this before on the podcast of the fact that like when you turn 1 years old, the months leading up to when you turn 1 year old are your first year of life,
Yeah, it's like you already
right?
experienced that
Yeah.
year. Yeah, we're
And it's
experiencing
so
30.
it's so interesting that right, like we're experiencing 30. That's why we have to do all of these things now that we
Yeah.
never had to do before. But I was wondering to myself, isn't it interesting that we say, "Oh, I'm 29, but technically I'm in my 30th year of life." What if I might just start going, I'm in my 30th year. I feel like that's
So
something that you would do when you're younger and then you want to be like
you want to be older?
21, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the funny thing, right? You're in your
Yeah.
21st year of life, but you can't start drinking until you're in your 22nd.
So yeah, that is funny. So in Korea, when you're born, you're one, I think is how that goes.
No.
Yeah, so like so they do it, I think. And also and I don't think they do it anymore. There's some law that just passed. You can
Wait,
Google this at
so
your
you're
leisure.
one even up to your first birthday, and then right after your first birthday,
You're
the day
two.
after your first birthday, you're two immediately?
Yeah, yeah. So if you I only know this because like I follow K-pop and like their ages are at least like 1 or 2 years older than they actually are because they follow this rule. Or they used to. I think there was actually a law that everyone's now going by their international age is what they call it, and not their Korean age. But you can Google it. This isn't completely off topic. Yeah, because they also add another year when the new year. I don't know something with the new year. I don't fucking know. I'm not Korean.
What if we all just walked around like they do with toddlers and you're like, we all just have to say how many months old we are, like all the time. You're
I
not allowed
don't.
to say years
I
anymore.
don't.
You're just this many months, just to be more accurate.
I don't like when I. This is just a personal thing. Don't say your kid's 18 months old. Like it's a year and some. Like
But here's the issue. If
what?
I'm gonna buy clothes for your kids, you better tell me how many months old they are, because if you tell me that they're one and then they're actually 18 months, they're not gonna fit in the clothes that I buy them. That's the
That's the
only
only
little
tidbit.
make,
Yeah.
but that's the kind of drives this whole point even more so. Not to say that as you get older, you change that much in such a short period of time, but the difference between a 12-month-old and an 18-month-old is not that
Is
long.
yeah.
And they're so different in size and
Hmm.
developmentally too, that when we get older, I mean, honestly, we
Do
might not
whatever you
be
want to
as
do.
different. We might not be as different physically in that much time when we're older, but a lot can change for you emotionally and cognitively
Oh, for
when
sure.
you're, in that many months.
Yeah. But anyway,
I want to know how many. I gotta look it up because I just feel like I want to know how many months old is a 30-year-old.
I mean, 30 times 12.
How many months old is a 30-year-old?
Just asked her phone, y'all.
Why are
Girl, 30 times
Okay,
12.
I
Is it
know,
not?
but that's math. And it's giving me all of these like it's giving me links to conversion websites instead of actually giving me the number that I want, which is annoying.
It's 360
Um,
months if you're
yeah, it's
exactly 30.
it's 359.72 months.
Oh, whatever with the leap years.
I don't know why it says that you multiply it by 11.99 instead of actually multiplying it by 12, which is
Leap
probably
years?
why it's oh maybe.
Yeah, leap
But
years probably.
360 months old. That's what I'm gonna just once we hit 30, that's
Once we
it.
hit
I'm
30,
360 months old. I'm 361 months old, and then I never have to
and then
deal
just
with.
never.
Then I'm just gonna confuse people, and then they're never. And remember, like we talked about in our was that our last episode that we talked about how time doesn't really exist anyway. So what difference does it make?
I think it was is it the episode before the
Before
last
that,
episode?
I'm gonna start
Whatever.
going by it. And I just want to see what happens,
Yeah. I'll see what, and everyone's gonna be like, "What the fuck are you
and
talking
just
about?"
just see what happens. I just want to see what happens. This was not what we wanted to talk about
No,
today.
but you do have to Google the Korean age math whenever, just for your own,
For my own brain
yeah,
to
just for your
give me
own
another
leisure.
existential
Yeah,
crisis. Thank you.
yeah.
So whatever age we find you at today.
Hi, hello.
Hello. So last week we started talking a little bit about things related to the social
Laughter.
life of humans. Yeah, we
That's what
talked about
last episode
laughter.
was.
That's what last episode was. But we're gonna continue kind of on this theme of humans as social creatures. Apparently, I've been in the realm of I've always think I've been thought. Ugh, words are so difficult. I'd always think that I've been interested in how creatures function socially,
Mm-hmm.
specifically humans, especially because I'm trying to. The rest of
Figure
my
that
life
out.
will be trying to be trying to be like, what the hell is going on? Um, but I was listening to. I was telling everyone. I was telling Maria prior to this that I have a rotation of about 3 different podcasts that I'm listening to during any given time of the week. I was listening to Brene Brown started up
Mm.
again. I was listening to her this morning while I was cleaning, but a topic came up on one of the podcasts of which I don't remember which one or who was even on it at this point, but they were talking about the social tool of imitation.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because, it's so funny because we don't think about, or I guess I don't think enough about what purpose things had. We kind of scrutinize things for the way they are now, but don't necessarily look at like the initial intended purpose of why these things were developed as tools for social life, like laughing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But whoever the person was that was being interviewed brought up how imitation used to be how people would survive in like early social situations, because if you were amongst the first few men or women that were present on the earth, you learned how to make fire and make tools and live your freaking life and survive by watching other people do it
I
and
mean,
then
that makes
imitating
sense.
what you
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. Especially if they are like succeeding in it,
Right.
then why not? Right? Yeah. I agree.
And that's kind of where the whole concept of like the proof is in the pudding, kind of where you watch somebody do it and then you're like, okay, I know this is safe to do, so I'm going to imitate, or I know that this will get me the goal that I want, so I'm going to imitate. And it's become
Mm-hmm.
so much a part of our DNA as the way we learn things that kids do it all the time.
Oh yeah, all the freaking time. From like either the people that they actually interact with in person or through like the celebrities or like sports people they follow, for
And
sure.
that's where it becomes super dangerous.
I just saw a video on Twitter of like third graders, I think, playing basketball, and they were like mocking each other like they do in the NBA, which is very, and of course, that the NBA players, they're all like, they're very competitive because it is the most competitive like league, like basketball wise. So they're all talking shit all the time. But then you see these third graders doing the same exact gestures and everything. I'm just like, Okay, there has to be a line that just got like crossed somewhere.
For real. I mean,
Yeah.
and when you look at, I also wonder this too when I watch, have you seen any of those videos of parents who are like training their kids to do stuff at a young age? Like I just saw one the
Yeah,
other
like if
day where a a dad was like a gymnast and he like had taught his kid to like be on the rings from when he was a couple months old.
oh yeah, I've seen or like I see a lot of like snowboarding ones. I don't know why they're being pushed to me on
Hmm.
TikTok, but like these kids are like toddlers and they're already like
Yeah,
on
and they have
snowboards.
this. It's funny too because this is like not necessarily related, but all of my studies of the science of the body and the history of looking at the way that dancing from a young age has fucked up my body personally, but also fucks up a lot of other bodies. And the concept of early specialization in the body having to do a specific action repetitively, without building all other like cross-pattern motor skills can be super dangerous for the body. It makes me laugh when I see, like, I mean, I'm jaded, so I laugh, but
Yeah,
uh,
you're more jaded than me probably
like
at this.
watching parents do that to their kids, and it's kind of like, well, you don't know what you don't know, and like I understand that, and then other parents try to intimidate it because they see that they're successful, and it's just like this is exactly the point of what I was talking about with intimidation,
Mm-hmm.
imitation.
Yeah.
I don't. So we go back to the history of this, right? So
Yeah.
you're a human who wants to learn how to survive. So you start to imitate the people who've been successful at survival, right? They know
Yes.
how to eat. All the basic necessities get covered. And then it becomes the issue of, well, now all of our basic necessities are covered, but this person also knows how to do like this special skill, right? And then you also get into like learning how to build a house, learning how to make things, learning how to any of those like trade, the really literally trade skills, what we call now trade skills. People
Yeah.
all had to learn that from one another, and that's like the whole concept of like trade schools and internships. And
Mm-hmm.
before they were internships, they were called something else, apprenticeships. There we go. Like that whole
Yes.
concept of all of those things are to help us survive. But once we get to the point where we don't need that as a skill necessarily for survival anymore, what do we do with it?
I no, you're right. I have no idea. Like, what do
Like
you like? And then what?
imitation has now turned into this whole
It's super social now,
mental, but
for
it's yeah, it's
sure.
like this mental gameplay. And what's kind of I mean, that's why we have
I mean, that's a good way to put it. It is a gameplay.
specifically the country that we have where it's like, well, he has a boat and he has this house and this is what his and he's got all of these things in his house. That's where, you know, capitalism can just have a feeding frenzy on all of that because it that need for imitation isn't there as a basic social structure for survival anymore. It's there to feed the ego, which is gross
Oh,
and scary.
100%.
And
Yeah.
it's 10 times scarier because teenagers have access to all of it. And
Mm-hmm.
developmentally, psychologically, the teenage years are where you start to get hyper focused on being accepted and being social and using imitation as a social skill to find, your people and find
I was to
yourself.
say it, especially like teenagers, like they'll just imitate to like get into the friend group that they want or like the people that they want to interact with, and it just gets super toxic. Because then, like, who are you at the end of the day? But
And
just
it's not
imitations of like multiple people
right. And it's not, this is why and I stand by this. I would have never survived as a teenager in like
today.
this time. Yeah. Because the amount, it's one thing to get influence and have a pressure to feel like you need to imitate not only like the way you look, but the way you are and the way you think when it comes to the people that are at the end of your nose every day, right? Like the people who
Mm-hmm.
are in your life, like your family members and your friends and the teachers around you. Like that was who we had access to as 90s kids, right? Like the rest of the world didn't influence us
No, it was just
because
like the
it
TV
was,
shows we watch. It was like the cartoons, but
yeah,
like that
right.
was so far
Very true.
fetched that it was just like,
But it's only to a certain extent, and there were only so many that we had
yeah.
access to. And there was more restrictions on what kids had access to. There was a lot,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't so much of a blurred line of what what what's appropriate for children, right? Like quote unquote appropriate. But
Right. It's just more
now,
accessible.
right, now everything is more accessible, and it's like not only do you have to, as a teenager now, not only do you have to be concerned about influence and potentially imitating cues from peers, family, things that are right at the end of your nose, but then everything else that spans out that you will probably in your lifetime never actually be able to touch in the world is
Yeah, they're
also influencing you, and you're having to decide like what do I imitate from all of that stuff.
there's also people called influencers now. Like there are people literally influencing you to buy a certain product or like I don't know, dress a certain way or like make your house a certain way, you know? Like so I mean, yeah, I don't think we would bode well if we were teenagers now. I don't think so. I think I would just be too
I
far
would
into
not.
whatever. I'd be just too far into like whatever influencer that I follow or like couple of people and I just imitate that shit.
I find myself even on certain days going, wait, what am I doing? Like you realize that something else has gotten in your head when you're not even aware of the fact that it's gotten into your head.
Hmm.
And that's being a person who has tapped into some level of self-awareness, right? Like how, and this is where things get ugly, right? This is where we start to use imitation very blatantly as a tool for war. So here's a perfect example of this. I literally was just listening to a really in-depth breakdown of how all of this happened. And I did not know this was the depths or levels of what was happening. So it astonished me and it grossed me out at the same time. This is exactly what happened with Russia's involvement in everything American and our American political system and our American
Okay, go
social
ahead.
system.
I'm excited. Go ahead.
So the truth about, I mean, like we all, and we've even talked about this, the truth about when everyone has been talking for the last 4 or 5 years about Russia's involvement in American politics.
Hmm.
The bigger, larger truth behind it is that, and the facts that I, oh, that kill me, is that this concept of the way we've set up our social systems to wanting to imitate for beyond safety, for wanting to imitate for social acceptance, for wanting to
Hmm.
imitate for potential success, right? As a certain type of person and wanting to find and be within people that are in our own groups. We've created so much of that in
Hmm.
America that it makes us the perfect target to easily turn in on itself, right? Like we don't need the state of our country over the last 5 years has not necessarily been like, we don't need somebody to bring us war. We just need someone to light a match and we will like burn ourselves down.
I was saying then, yeah, all the opinions come in and yeah, yeah.
Right. So with the true details of what was going on the internet with Russian involvement was
Uh-huh.
that Russian leadership literally sat down and had a very, I mean, it's genius. It's a genius tactic, but it's gross because it worked. A conversation about how do we infiltrate America? Like, what do we do to kind of
Uh-huh.
knock down America? And
You go on Facebook.
the realization was we don't have to do anything. We just need to light a match. And the way that they chose to light a match was by creating trolls and creating
Literally.
bots online that
Hmm.
had very strong and versatile opinions that could
Literally just light a match, like what you just said.
connect connect people who were in various positions around the country who were filled with gasoline
Hmm.
in the
They
forms
just
of
need a
like
forum.
fear
They
and
just
anger and
yeah.
something
Yeah.
and just plant that seed and let the fucking fire burn. That was their entire
That was it.
plan. That was
It
their plan.
wasn't It's just like literally. So I think I spoke with this documentary. You should watch this if this is what's like pressing in your mind right now, like all this information. You should watch Agents of Chaos, that
And
documentary
you've been
that I
telling me about it. I have to write it down
it
because if I don't write it down, I don't remember it by the time we're done talking, and then I never find it. I'm literally uncrinkling a piece of paper and writing it down right now.
um Agents of Chaos. I think it's a 2 or 3 parter, but it basically walks people through that. What you just said is that they lit a
The
match and they just let it
worst,
happen.
the worst part about this is that not only were there bots, right, which and for people who were me like 6 months ago that don't know anything about anything online, a
Yeah.
bot is something that's literally created by an algorithm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
Go
like
on.
data. It's just like it's just
Wow.
data.
Yeah.
It's just data that repopulates and looks for certain things and shares a lot of the same concepts and ideas, right? Like that.
Oh,
It's
look at
not a
you. Yeah.
person. It's
Yes.
not a person. It's just it literally. It's a form of AI. Like it's a form of
Yeah.
a bot
It
becomes
truly
a
is.
form of AI at this point.
Mhm.
I detest the fact
Technology
that I know technology. I
is
hate it.
wild. Yeah.
But the thing that was more uncomfortable for me is that there were literal people, and this is the difference
Yes.
between a
And
bot and a troll, friends. There were literal
wow, look at
people
you.
that were paid for months and years on end to come into an office and sit and represent
Yes.
a person and be, like you said, an influencer. Like they
Yes.
literally planted people into
Agents
the
of Chaos,
American
dude.
culture
Agents of
to
Chaos.
to you they and that's exactly what they did, right? They saw certain types of people that were easy targets to light fires under
They literally,
imitated that
yes.
person online, a not real person imitated that person online in multiple forms, not like just one. There were hundreds of people on payroll to fucking do this
They were on
job.
payroll doing this shit.
And
Literally, Agents of Chaos. They got a journalist that was writing an article about these people. They actually got into the
okay, then I
like
have to, and
the
that
like
will be what I
space.
do when we're done today.
Yes. It's wild because then it's like they're making websites that are like Black Lives Matter Kentucky or something. I don't know. Like, oh,
Whether
put
you're for or
something.
against, just
Yes. And they're from Russia.
taking, I mean, we will always be the easy targets of race because that is the foundation of our country and all of the issues our country has. But they
Hmm.
took, for example, they took multiple concepts and themes that were heavyweights of issue making in our country and created these trolls around it, and then just let Americans go at each other to the point of where it got so and like that it got so high and so intense that people to this day are still moved to take action off of the internet. I mean,
Oh
there was
yeah,
just a
for
shooting that
sure.
happened in I mean, the poor people that were shot in LA
Hmm.
less than 24 hours ago. And that was an Asian populace that was targeted.
Yeah, it's Lunar New Year. Yeah.
I just like that. So I guess this kind of circles us back to the question that I posed before. What what do we do with this imitation when we no longer need it for survival? This is the shit we do.
Yeah, it truly just becomes okay, I see someone's angry because of XYZ. How do I make him or her or them 50 times angrier and then
Yeah,
affect the whole
you
community and
use it
populace?
as a tool. You use it as a freaking war tool for manipulation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you want to know what makes me
Humans are
kind
just
of,
too social.
but you want to know what makes me really angry about this whole thing and feels like I kind of want to call bullshit on us for just being the way that we are.
Sure.
If you try to use, so let's look back at, I
Uh-huh.
also listened to a podcast that talked
Oh,
about
look at you.
the truth about what happened in Woodstock.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
So this kind of blew my mind about
Okay.
the whole point of Woodstock was that in the late 60s, a bunch of young people who were kind of felt like they couldn't do anything to deal with all the crap that was going on in the country between racism,
Between everything.
sexism,
Yeah.
war, like they felt like they couldn't do anything. So their goal was to create a community of peace, like through a music concert for 3 days. Perfect example of imitation. They literally all got together and was like, what makes you feel calm and chill? Oh, this is what like, and
Uh-huh.
that's where people started having sex for the first time, exploring sex as an outlet for that, and then
Mm-hmm.
trying drugs, listening to different types of music. Like they created a community off imitation, but the basis, the foundation of the whole thing was just to live in peace.
Mm.
And when we want to foster imitation in others for concepts that feel concepts like love, concepts like
Yeah.
peace, concepts like even like justice, those get written off as like, oh, you're so hippy dippy. Like perfect example,
Yeah.
people who practice yoga, people who like happen to be more spiritual, and we make jokes about people who make comments that are extremely serene, or people who are nature lovers. Like we make jokes about people who we
Like
laugh
it's
about
cult,
that form of,
like it's
right.
cultish or
We
something.
laugh at that about that form of imitation, and
Mm-hmm.
we say that that's not true, or that's not valid, or that that's not believable. But then we
Mm-hmm.
make space to accept, whether it's willingly or 90% of it is we're accepting it and not even realizing we're accepting it. We make space for forms of imitation like this, but we don't make space for forms of imitation like that.
Yeah, I don't know where the social like construct just veered towards the latter, like being more accepted. Like, oh, like I don't know, like all the like the QAnon stuff. Like we just take it like as like a yeah, that happened. Right? Like as opposed to saying like no, that's a cult.
Right,
Right?
and this is a problem.
Yeah. Like this is a political, social, economical problem. Like those
But
people.
I don't understand. I think, well,
I don't know.
the reality of all of this, right? If we chuck this up into a tiny little neat little box, the
Maybe
reality of all of this is that humans as individuals are not comfortable enough with the psychology around love and peace and acceptance. That's not what our
right, like
country
the
or
hate,
our,
violence, and
right,
like
that's
is
not what
more
we are
acceptable.
programmed off of. We're from birth, we're not programmed off of that.
Because
Um,
like I mean, even like organized religion can be considered a cult, if you will. Um
yeah.
Honestly, me and Ashley on my other podcast Googled what the fuck the definition of a cult was. So
Isn't it
like
just a group of certain people having strong beliefs in a certain idea, like a
a system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or object. Or
why does
a
it have to
mis
be religious?
or a misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing.
Okay.
I think because our society just deems religion like they immediately like
I
love
mean,
peace spirituality, then
the
is like,
original cults were very religious. So I can
oh,
definitely,
100%.
the easiest way to persuade people was for that. But I mean, cults, the whole concept of a cult,
It's just excessive admiration.
right? And they feed off of imitation. That
Correct.
you
Yeah.
literally are imitating the way that somebody
Yeah.
else thinks or believes or
Right.
acts.
But when it
It
comes to violence and stuff, it's just like, no, that's not a cult.
right.
Or
But
like, no, that's just them being weird.
I mean, the
Or
Crusades
like
were a
excessive.
freaking cult. Like it's religious cult at, so it's I don't I don't
Mm-hmm.
there must be psychologists or social workers that have studied this, but
Yeah.
it's such an interesting concept, and it's truly, when it comes to imitating, we have
Yes.
such an easier time as humans hopping up onto the conga line of anger and violence than we do like joining in on a line of peace. And the thing that made me kind of laugh the most when I was listening to um, a lot of the history about Woodstock is that when you think about, I mean, they said that there were 300 to 500,000 young people there at the time, over the days, the course of the 3 days that the event was happening. And it's like, well, those 300,000 people that were young adults between like the ages of what, like 16 and their mid 20s,
Mm-hmm.
How old are they now?
They're still around, aren't they? Not.
They would have
I
to be.
can't. I
But
can't.
how,
Then again, I don't know how time works anymore. So 60s seem
where,
like very, very near for some reason.
where did all of those people that believed in all of those things go? They're my parents' age.
And you know what?
Neither of my
They
parents
they
ever went, even though I really wish that they had because I would love to hear the stories. But
sometimes they
they're,
shift over though. They
but
shift over
right, that
to
concept
yeah.
of now I'm an adult and now I have to imitate what adults do.
Which is why when there's I feel like boomers more often than not always say like, "Oh, you're progressive now, but wait till you get older."
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just like that like somehow I don't know where I heard it, probably somewhere on TV or something. Um, but I don't think that rings true now.
No, no, no. I think that
I think we've gotten to the point where like the millennials and like the
the
Gen Z,
winds,
like you're sticking to your morals at this point.
the winds of change the winds have changed for the climate of
Hmm.
the next generations. And
Yeah,
this was another thing that I have been thinking a lot about. And I think that you can agree with me on this because it was a really good perspective shift for me. Um, the episode of Brene Brown's Unlocking Us that I would have been listening to interviewed um a journalist and author named Anand Giridas,
sure.
and he just published a book called The Persuaders that was all about being a freaking American and dealing with politics right now. And he has such this book is on my order list now because it changed just listening to this like 2 hour interview with him really changed my thought on, and I'll say this from me perspective, and then you can take or leave whatever you want to.
Sure.
This podcast is proof of how insanely critical I am of our country. Not that I need proof because I've openly talked about it to anybody, but and that's the blessing that we have as being Americans, right?
Hmm.
But the reality of the situation that listening to this author talk about made me realize is that there is no, first of all, and we talk about this all the time, America's young, right?
Oh
America's
yeah, yeah, super.
not even 1,000 years old. We're barely reaching 500 years old. Um,
Hmm.
and the past existence of human race was definitely more or less a single shape of whiteness, a single shape of this is
Yeah.
the type of person and the type of human, and this is who is dominant. A single shape of the white, stereotypical, heterosexual cisgender male is the freaking avatar of humanity,
Yeah,
right?
literally, yeah, yeah.
And for as long as humans have existed, that's been the archetype. And our tiny little baby country, and to emphasize this more, and that archetype is the person who gets to make the decisions, the person who gets to have the
Yeah, yeah.
power.
Hmm.
And
Right.
when you go, and there's one single person, right? And when you go across the world and you look at the history of the world, that kind of fits everywhere, right?
Yeah. People are
But
still
Amer
influenced no matter what race, creed, whatever. They're still
right,
influenced by
and
the
and
white
no one
male.
no one has tried to push that and change that on a huge systemic level.
Right.
In America, we are actively trying to do that,
Yeah.
right? And especially
And
over the last
that's
100
why,
years of our existence, right? And that's why we're dealing with the shit that we
yeah.
deal with, is we're actively trying to do that. And it is only because of the active fight to do that, if you look at the existence of humans, it has only been about 5 minutes of our existence that's been trying to happen. And
Right.
look at the amount of change that we've made
Right. We keep
to
pushing
what that
forward.
archetype is, or to
Right.
the very
We keep pushing forward and there is no archetype. It's just like you're just human.
right. And that's what we're fighting for. And that's the purpose of what we're trying to make out of this country. But
The pushback is surreal.
right. And how interesting is it if the human race gets to continue for, the next half of
Yeah.
of where we've been?
Hmm.
This is the time of our existence that we're going to look back on and be like, and this is when everything started to change.
Yeah.
And how the two perspectives that I've taken from looking at it like on this really big zoomed out lens is that how fucking cool is it that we're actually doing it, right? Like how fucking cool is it that
Yeah.
that if it wasn't for the work that's been done in the last 100 years, me specifically as a white person, as a white female, would
You
I
wouldn't have you
me
wouldn't have a
in that
checking account.
universe, right? Me in
Like
that universe would be completely unrecognizable to me and in this universe.
yeah, because
You
like
know what I mean?
how many freedoms do we have as women now?
But not even that, even the way I think as a white person would be
Oh, for
different,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
Like
no, for sure. Yeah.
catastrophically different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is like, holy crap, I'm so grateful that
Things have
we're
changed.
the like that, yeah, that the amount of change that has happened. That
Uh-huh.
that I can be and exist in different various communities with people who are just representing all different types of the human experience and
Mm-hmm.
have conversations about this shit. Like that,
Yeah.
like that
Right.
is stuff that even in the last 10 years has just,
Significantly just like
yeah, gone forward
increased.
so much.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, my brain, every time that I think for at least for a little while, I'll have to read the book and constantly reread it. I'm reminded of like this shit sucks, like sucks,
Mm-hmm.
but like this is the dirty fucking mud that the lotus flower has to be able to flourish in.
Yeah. No, for sure. Because without all this struggle, then there's no way that we're gonna get to some sort of equality situation.
And this is why America is the great experiment. And I don't I want in the hardest way, I want everyone else who is America, I want people all over the world to have the realization of like,
Mm-hmm.
this is the work that has been bestowed upon us. Like this is the true opportunity that has been bestowed upon us is to change the future of human existence.
Because there's so many different types of people here. Like
Right.
like
It's
it's a crazy amount. Like when you think about, especially if you're one to travel, like to like Asia, let's just say, because that's just my experience. Like the Philippines is just Filipinos. Like we're all just one type of person. Well, for the
right.
most part, right? There are different types of Filipinos within that, but the umbrella of being Filipino is
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And then it's like you see one white person, you're just like, what are they doing here?
That's one of the
Like,
points that the author of this book makes is that when you go to other parts of the world, yeah, there are like the few token people in the community who aren't a part of the
right.
community, or there are
And
few
like,
token people of
right.
color that aren't originally from that area and they're
And
just accepted.
I'm not saying white seeing white people in the Philippines is like the weirdest thing ever. I'm just like, oh,
Right, no,
whoa,
those are
right, got it.
they're there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not to the same way where specifically if I were to walk from where I live to where you live, you would see the freaking rainbow in the
Yeah.
like
Here,
the
correct.
humans
Yeah,
who are around. Um,
correct.
and that's not the
That's not the case everywhere
case.
else.
And another really beautiful point that the author brought up, his parents are Indian,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a father who worked for a couple years, worked in Paris, and they lived in Paris for 3 years. So his parents his parents moved to America, assimilated to America, and then got kind of comfy and were like, okay, let's try this in another country, and moved to Paris. And one of the things that he said that he realized that makes America different,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to remember, I'm going to try to remember this as a person too, is that I don't want to, I'm going to paraphrase what he said, but he said when he was in Paris, he never felt like like people of France, the French people were ever going to be like, okay, now this is your France too. He
Yeah,
was
that's the
like,
difference. Yeah.
no, 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 like they were very clear about the fact that like, oh, it's nice that you're visiting. Oh yeah, enjoy all of our stuff, enjoy our food, enjoy our art, but like
Oh, like you're
this
Indian.
isn't yours. Like
Right.
you're Indian and you're
Mm-hmm.
American, you're not French.
Yeah.
And when he's in America, even on the days where shit feels terrible, he still feels like, okay, this is my America. Like I can actually have a
Yeah,
piece of this country and it can be my own
which is wild to think
versus
about. Yeah, yeah.
right. And that's the whole point for all of us who, don't believe in necessarily the initial white systems that were created. Like that's the whole point of what
Hmm.
people like us want this country to be, right? Like that we should all be able
Yeah,
to have a piece of the pie and that be okay. And
and have it equally. Like have it like
right, right.
not because I get it. Like the mentality is like again, if I move to Canada, like I don't know how Canada is, or like if I move to France or like the UK, I don't think I would feel the same comfort that I have here in America, albeit all the racist discriminatory situations happening here. Because again, I feel like no matter what color you are here, yes, of course we're not equal, but at least they will still deem you as, for the most part, caveat, for the most part, as like an American.
Right.
Of granted, there are
And
some very racist people that are like, no, you're not.
we
You're go back to your country, and that's a whole different story. But for the most part,
we fight all the fights that are coming are because people
mhm.
believe if people didn't believe that they had a chance to have a piece of that pie, this fighting wouldn't be happening.
Correct, and I think we all think that we do,
Right, and that's the
and that's the
difference. And
difference.
it makes you look I
It's just, it's just the cis het white males don't
right,
want to give up
right,
whatever piece that they have.
right. And it's like, I'm sorry, but you sat as the driver on this bus for longer than you ever should have. Um,
Right.
but only when to circle us all the way back to the question of what do you do with intimidate? I keep saying wanting to say intimidation. What do you do with
Imitation.
imitation once you no longer need it as a tool for survival or early cognitive development? You use it to learn, understand, and appreciate the people that are in your community or the people from different communities that you need to build community with. Once we get to, and I think we do try that, right? Like me coming, perfect example, me as a kid going to Maria's house and just eating whatever her mom made and being like, yeah, I got it. Like
Let's just see. Yeah.
we, that's what we need to be doing with it. We need to,
Truly, you're just building community. I think you put it well because it is just, and that's like the stuff that I do as a Filipino American in my like group, and like the whole group is just we're just building community within the community that we have,
yeah,
that we all live in. Just so it's like a more accepted, more just like out there thing that's like, oh, there are Philams here in, I don't know, Central Jersey. That's cool.
yeah.
They have an event. What are they doing? Like it's just like,
And,
oh, they're visible.
and there has to be a clear,
Oh my God, hold on, wait. My sister just opened my door. That scared the shit out of
oh,
me.
hello.
But my lock is on. Hold on one second.
Oh, hey. Oh, both. You said sister, and I thought you meant one. Hey,
I can't
guys.
hear. Hi. She says hi.
Oh, I said you said my sister, and I was like, oh, I thought you meant
Sisters,
one. I didn't
sisters.
hear you say both.
All right,
Um,
they'll just chill over there.
the to full circle recap this, and the difference that we have to be very clear about making when we use imitation as a form of acceptance and wanting to get to understand people better, so that there has to be a very clear line between using it as an educative, explorative
Hmm.
tool versus I'm gonna use it as
Agents of Chaos
appropriation.
tool.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Oh,
use it as
appropriation.
appropriation, or
Yeah.
I'm gonna use it in a way to claim it as my own and then find some type of like success from it. That's again where we can easily step into muddy waters of manipulation. And if we can, I mean, and there are, I don't even, which example do I fucking pull from that is an example of that type of it, but there are so many ways that we can do it in a curious and kind manner.
Hmm. Right.
And I think that's once we move past this crap of like violence and into the place of acceptance and knowledge, that's where imitation's going to become an invaluable tool for us as humans again, because we're going to use it the same way we did at our inception of like that curious, creative, trying to
Survival. but not hurting
Right.
people.
But instead of not trying to survive, it's going to be the way that we can thrive and move forward as a race of humans. This would be a great, I would be so curious to dive into this concept with both of them because they're
Oh, they're
also
the different
different
age
yeah,
ranges.
they're
Yeah,
different
yeah,
generations.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I can ask them, see if they.
I don't even know how to bring them in the
I don't
loop
even
without
know.
just confusing the crap out of them. This is
Yeah,
such an in-depth
another time.
conversation.
Another time.
I'm yeah, it's just so curious. It's a curious
Imitation.
imitation
Yeah.
is an interesting
There's a fine
construct.
line. There's always a fine line with these things because it's just like sometimes it's a good thing because then you get great values from people that you're imitating. But then when do you stop?
Where it's the different, it's like the separation of church and state. Like, what's your actual identity and what's the identity of the people that you're taking on, which is something that we all
Right.
need to just get a better grasp of as humans, period.
Just yeah, because then once you cross that line, forget it.
Right,
Hi,
you get
Kate.
lost in it. I see her elbow. But okay, so let's leave you, listener, with this thought of where does imitation exist in your life and what's its purpose? Because
I mean, that's a good start because then once you find the purpose in it, then is it a good or bad thing that you're doing
yeah,
it?
because the reality of the truth of human existence at this point is that there is no such, we might all be individual, but there is no longer, or, I mean, this is another argument conversation we could have. The concept of originality doesn't matter how creative you get. I'm sure that at some point and somewhere down the line of human existence, it's
It
already a thought that's
happened.
been thought. Yeah, or a
It
thing that's been
happened.
did.
Yeah. You just had the
So,
resources to make it happen.
right. So
Yeah.
when you're making a choice or you're being creative, or where does that, where does imitation fit into that for you? And is it something that's being driven by the curious, the kind, the community, or is it something that's being driven by ego,
So ego, hatred,
survival,
violence.
anger? Yeah, like is it, it goes back to the comment, who made that famous quote that every choice is driven by fear or love? I don't remember. Somebody famous.
Oh,
But
so yeah, we've all heard that quote somewhere, reiterated somewhere.
where does imitation in your life fall on that scale? And are there any adjustments that you would want to make to it?
I'll say choose accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Something that I'm gonna go into the week with and be like,
I was
now
like,
that I've processed this more fully,
now that I know
where
who
does
I
this
am, where am I imitating?
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man. We welcome you, listener, to travel down into that journey of awareness with us.
Okay. Was that it? Was that your
That was
closing?
it. That was
Okay,
all.
great. All right. Bye, guys.